IGT, baby.
What's cracking, guys? It's your boy Dream Mafia coming back to you with another video. So we're gonna check out this video called "Sports Games Got Boring and We the Cause of It." No other than by the Black Hokage. And I'm gonna be honest, right now, it did get a lot of boring. Like, I feel like sports games used to be a lot fun when it was archaic and they didn't have like no seriousness put towards it. Like, you just have a game right there with no transactions, none of that shit. We just enjoy it for what it's like brought to the table. And when it came down to unlocking things, we had to put our time and energy on unlocking things. So I feel like that we lost the recipe for. And nowadays, when you look at these games, they're trying to make a semi comeback, you know, similar to what we have for, like, you know, NBA Streets, or we have with NFL Blitz and all that stuff. It just don't hit the same. And they definitely tried, but I feel like not enough energy was put towards it, and they just lost the plot completely. So I feel like if things would have had changed for the better, and they had some of the old developers be in control of this new game in this day and age, and stick to what made the game so interesting for us to check out, maybe things would have been different. But the sheer fact that we didn't have that at all, and nowadays everything cannot be purchased unless you have some type of transactions, you know, to unlock characters, unlock venues, whatever the case is, instead of just putting the grind in and unlocking it yourself. Like, it's been different, man. I think that was the real downside of a lot of these games that we used to know and love, you know. So I don't envision a circumstance we're going to go back to that, you know, that time when we really put the grind and unlock different things that we love right there, and our time was worthy enough doing it, you know, because nowadays everything moves so quick and you just gotta it just go through virtual currency. So I miss that. I'm pretty sure a lot of people, you know, who grew up in the 90s and the 80s that's related to all of this stuff can say the same thing. So we're gonna check out this video and whatnot by the Black Hokage. I appreciate your love and support. Y'all make sure y'all give him a follow and subscribe. And I'm gonna link the original video in the description below. But let's get right into it.
Sports game made you lose your mind. Not because of a glitch in franchise mode, not because you can't afford this year's increase on VC.
Oh shit, I'm bugging the fuck out. My camera wasn't even on. My bad. Let's continue.
Prices, but because the game was just genuinely fun. The kind of fun where somebody throws a controller, somebody else is jumping off the couch, and y'all are both just laughing so hard that nobody even remembers who won. I'm talking NBA Jam,
exactly.
NFL Blitz, NBA Street. Games like that didn't give a damn about realism. They just wanted you to have the time of your life. So how do we go?
And I was just saying that. Like, I completely said that. Like, you know, a lot of things that we enjoy about those type of games, we didn't give a damn about the realism and all that. Like, just make it fun for us to sink our teeth into and put a lot of hours into it, and just enjoy with, you know, your friends and family and all that stuff. That type of shit.
From $70 games that charge you another $50 to upgrade your players overall. Today we're going to explore all of that and more, plus what the future holds, because with games like NBA The Run on the horizon, there might just be hope for the future in a video that I'm calling The Rise, Fall, and Return of Arcade Sports Games.
Yo, Bronze Era.
So let's go back to where this whole thing started. The year is 1978. Atari drops football into the arcades, and no, I'm not talking the Madden version. Actually, not anything close. We're talking X's and O's crawling across a vertically scrolling field, 7 players per side, and a trackball controller that had to be physically spun as fast as humanly possible to make your guys move. There were no passing routes, no playbooks, no commentary. Just 2 people at a cabinet trying to outrun each other through a chaos of blocky icons. It wasn't pretty, but it was the second highest earning arcade game in the US in 1979, right behind Space Invaders. People were showing up for this game. Don't believe me? Ask your drunk uncle at the next family function about Atari football. I bet he will hit the meanest "That's So Raven" blank stare as he begins to reminisce over the good old days. Like,
if you know me as Al Bundy.
The trackball is the key to understanding why Atari football works. Spinning that thing wasn't a gimmick, it was the game. Your movement speed was literally tied to how fast your hands could move, so both players were going absolutely feral trying to outrun each other. The game was famous for causing blisters on old head hands. That physical intensity turned a football video game into something almost athletic. And because both players were at the same cabinet, the trash talk could turn really ugly. This meant if both parties had a couple beers in their system, things were likely to turn into a UFC pay-per-view. Then Konami came in 1983 with their game Track and Field, and the button mashing generation gets their magnum opus. It was 6 Olympic events, 3 buttons, and 0 room for subtlety. You just hammered 2 run buttons as fast as possible, and you prayed your timing on the jump was right. This game was so loud and competitive that you could hear people playing from across the arcade. The clacking was that loud, and things got so serious that people developed actual techniques involving pencils, sliding fingers, and anything else that they can use to get an edge. I think one of the peaks for Track and Field was when Konami ran a 1984 track and field competition that pulled over 1 million participants internationally. That's 1 million people organized around a 3-button arcade game. You could argue that the genre was already building its own culture with events like this. Then there's Punch-Out! That dropped in 1984, and Nintendo did something that nobody else was doing. They built personality into their opponents. You had classic characters such as Glass Joe, Bald Bull, and Piston Hurricane, and each fighter had tells, patterns, and a whole character that you had to read before you could learn to beat them. The dual screen cabinet put the action on the bottom and the stats on the top, and the whole thing felt more like a cartoon you controlled than a video game you played. That blueprint of expressive characters and pattern-based gameplay was a pick-up-and-play style of game on the surface, but it had real depth underneath. Adding Mike Tyson to the follow-up game in '87 was the icing on the cake that helped solidify arcade sports action was here to stay. But those were just some of the big titles. I mean, ask any old head, and I'm sure they'll also tell you about games such as 10-Yard Fight, Hypersports, and 1-on-1 with Dr. J versus Larry Bird, which eventually also got a sequel called 1-on-1 with Larry Bird versus Jordan. If you ask me, I believe what defined the bronze generation of arcade sports titles is that none of them were trying to simulate anything. Atari football wasn't trying to be an NFL broadcast. Track and Field wasn't training you for the Olympics, and Punch-Out! For damn sure was never confused for a real boxing match. The hardware limitations of that era meant that simulation wasn't even an option. So developers only built their sports games with fun in mind. They built their games around the feeling of competition and that energy of playing next to another person. I'd say limitations forced creativity, and that creativity produced a genre that would be taken to the next level in
the Silver Era.
And while we get into the Silver Era, let me just say the 70s and the 80s really was like the start of all of this archaic fun experience when it came down to video games. And you know, like you said, with the Atari football, Track and Field, and Punch-Out, those was like really introducing what fun arcade games you can really enjoy and have a good time with. And you know, like you said, you see the friendly competition of them too, and that carried a lot, you know, through the 70s and the 80s up until when we get to the 90s, and that was like really the breakout of arcade games and all that too, which we'll get into. As you know, I'm pretty sure they're gonna bring up about Techno Bowl and NBA Jam, but let's continue.
If the bronze era of the 70s and 80s was sports games learning to crawl, the 90s is where arcade sports titles didn't just learn to walk, but run. NBA Jam hit arcades in 1993, and the whole conversation changed overnight. I'm talking 2-on-2 basketball, no fouls, real NBA players with their faces scanned right into the game, and Tim Kitzrow somewhere in the booth screaming. When it came to sales, the original arcade release pulled $1 billion in quarters. Not $1 billion in total revenue across all platforms, not $1 billion adjusted for inflation, but $1 billion in literal quarters dropped into arcade machines. That number tells you everything you need to know about what the audience was ready for. What Mark Tamel and the Midway team understood that nobody else did at that time is that the fantasy wasn't playing professional basketball. The fantasy was controlling someone who was unstoppable. Players jumping way above their own height. Dunks that bent physics in half. Defenders getting trucked through with 0 consequences. That is what resonated with a wider audience. Then the on fire mechanic lands on top of all that, and suddenly every game has a story. 3 buckets in a row, and your player is literally on fire, ball burning as it goes through the net. Shooting percentages are through the roof until the other team scores. That mechanic created momentum swings that made every game feel like it was a story being written in real time. You weren't just playing, you were creating cinema. But the icing on the cake was the sequel secrets this game contained. Bill Clinton as a playable character, hidden codes, developer cameos. But the
Fresh
most
Prince, I think,
egregious
was in it, too.
example was that the head developer himself built in a code that specifically made the Bulls miss late shot attempts against the Pistons because he was a Detroit fan. Somehow he
wild.
made the classic
That's
bad boy
wild.
Piston roster even more bad boy or something. Look here,
I
listen,
never
don't
knew
judge
that.
what I just said. Just know that NBA Jam rewarded curiosity. It rewarded the kid who stayed up trying random button combinations. It rewarded the people who shared discoveries like playground mythology. It understood that the game existing wasn't just enough. Players needed to feel like there was always something else to find. Now, 4 years later, Termel is back at Midway doing the same thing, but for football. NFL Blitz launched in arcades in
Oh my
1997
God,
with
man.
7 players
My
per
favorite.
side, 30 yards for first downs, and late hits that went long after the whistle and felt very satisfying to pull off. Mwah. The game featured German suplexes, body slams, and celebrations that were basically taunting turned into gameplay. Personally, for me, NFL Blitz scratched that primal itch in me that just wanted to have fun knocking someone's head off. NFL
Right.
Blitz was so intense that when the NFL saw a preview build before the launch, they reportedly tried to hand the licensing fee back to Midway. They told Midway the game was just too violent and they couldn't have the league associated with it. But somehow, someway, Midway negotiated just enough compromise to keep the license and still ship something that felt completely wrong in the best way possible. Now, if I can interject my own opinion, I find this entire story hilarious. This is true, by the way. The NFL is a league who is notorious for the way they handle CTEs, and somehow they felt Blitz was too violent and would make the league look bad, not the way they treat real human beings. Thank God the league loosened up and allowed the game to be paused.
Exactly. Because if you know, back in the 90s, when motherfuckers was getting hit, and I'm talking about truck hit till the helmets come off and all that stuff, we talking about true CTE fashion. That was violent. What we played on NFL Blitz, you're literally just tossing your opponent around, and what I love to do a lot when they down, Hulkamania leg drop them and all that, or just stomp on them. Like, that was fun to us, and they deemed it as violent, knowing that your sport in that era was even more dangerous than what we playing. Come on now. You can't compare the two. So I'm glad Midway was able to double down and was able to be successful of keeping a license of the NFL players and stuff like that while still having a violent of their game. So that was the beauty of it.
Because not only did fans get a great game that reviewed well, but everyone got their pockets laced. The PlayStation version sold 1.5 million copies, and the
that.
N64 version sold over 1 million copies when it eventually came to console. Doesn't seem like much now, but that was solid back in the 90s when gaming was a much more niche hobby.
Yeah.
The crazy part is that Midway wasn't done. They really carried this era because in 1999, Ready to Rumble Boxing dropped on the Dreamcast, and it was like Punch-Out, but rebuilt for the 3D era with all that personality and whatnot. It featured Michael Buffer doing the intro of every
The
fight,
gold
an array
Michael
of
Buffer.
unique characters with their own fighting styles led by Afro Thunder, and then there was the Rumble Meter. The Rumble Meter fills up letter by letter as you land shots, and when it's full, you can trigger a special flurry of moves that drops opponents with a character-specific combo. The game sported progressive bruising and swelling showing up on fighters' faces as the fight went on, so you could see the damage accumulating over time. It may look goofy now, but back then, that level of detail alone made the winning feel like it was something
I'll
special.
still play it to this day.
Game was so
Still.
special that even the King of Pop himself had to pull up the fight. Like,
Michael Jackson, yo. That was dope.
You can't win.
I personally believe what the Silver Era proved collectively is that the arcade formula could carry real licenses and real culture without turning into something safe and boring. NBA Jam had the actual NBA. Blitz had the actual NFL. Ready to Rumble had Michael Buffer and Michael Jackson. I mean, these weren't knockoff products. They were licensed, recognizable, culturally specific, and completely uninterested in pretending to be something they weren't. And because of it, the audience showed up in massive numbers every single time, such as the previous 3 games we just discussed, plus games like Mario Tennis, Virtua Striker, all them wrestling games on the N64, Wayne Gretzky's 3D hockey, and Pablo Sanchez backyard baseball.
Backyard
Truthfully,
baseball.
if the 90s proved the concept of a licensed arcade sports game worked, then it's a no-brainer to claim the early 2000s perfected it in.
And before we jump into that, let me piggyback off to say the 90s really set the tone of how arcade games should be fun. Starting with the NBA Jam to NFL Blitz to Ready to Rumble. The list goes on and on. Hell, I even take it a step further. One of my favorite games of all time, WWF, the WrestleMania arcade game. Like, that is what you take the sports of either wrestling, football, basketball, and put a little spin to it. So people who not knowing what football is, like Madden and stuff like that, when they put on NFL Blitz, they doing that and having fun. Like, of course, you want the options to win the game, but it's other like features of it that makes you drop your jaw and say, "Wow, he did that shit! Like, he did a crazy dunk, or I put somebody down from a tackle, but I get to stomp them out, poking me a leg drop." And I'm like, that is amazing, and it gets you more entertained to say, you know what, let me put more quarters into this, let me spend more time into that, and then bringing it to your home consoles. Like, it's a lot that hangs in a balance when it comes down to that era of arcade games, and we gotta credit Midway for that acclaim, and more stages than ever when we get to the 2000s right now. Even Sega really went ballistic when it came to that. So I feel like the 90s really like was a tone setter, elevated it, and then of course, the 2000s took it from there. Mainly the early and the mid 2000s, I would say. So
if you had to pick one game that represents everything this genre is capable of at its absolute peak, NBA Street Volume 2 would be the definitive answer for most people. It was April of 2003. EA Big drops a 3-on-3 street ball game with Pete Rock and CL Smooth's Troy playing the second you hit the main menu. Fabito Garcias was calling the action from the sidelines like he was actually at Rucker Park, and 3 different versions of Michael Jordan were available on the same roster. Not one Jordan, but 3. The 1985 Bulls Jordan, the 1996 Bulls Jordan, and the Wizards Jordan, the 40-year-old one who was still dropping 40 on people's heads. You could put them all on the same squad. Many people called it the greatest basketball video game of all time, and honestly, I think I agree. I love how the Game Breaker system gave Volume 2 its emotional swing. You'd fill the meter with style points, then you would cash it out for a sequence that punished your opponent and shifted the score. You also had the option to hold it and go for a level 2 Game Breaker that was basically a scripted humiliation ritual. You weren't just trying to win, you were trying to win with enough style to earn the right to end somebody and embarrass them. That distinction matters. It's the difference between a game that measures output and a game that rewards expression. But what makes NBA Street Volume 2 so special is I bet a lot of you guys don't know the story behind it. Who built this game? See, the dev team was based out of EA's Vancouver campus, and by their own description, not my words, theirs, they were just a bunch of Canadian hockey guys who went into this project knowing almost nothing about street ball culture. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. EA assigned a NBA Street game to a bunch of hockey fans, but thank God they didn't let that deter them. They just
look at that. A bunch of Canadians that didn't know a thing or two about basketball turned this into one of the best games of all time from a sports genre. One of the greatest games of all time. Wow. That really just shocked me.
just decided to do the work. What they did is they started studying those AND1 mixtapes. They started studying hip hop albums and old Rucker Park footage, which, by the way, just the prime example of if he wanted to, he would, ladies.
I know that's right.
And to add more seasoning to the game, the team flew Bobito Garcia to the studio, who had been announcing street ball games in New York since 1982, and co-hosted one of the most important hip hop radio shows called the Stretch Armstrong and Bobito Show. He was brought to Vancouver for a full week of recording sessions where he was given zero restrictions on his creative freedom. He spent 8 hours a day, 5 days straight, screaming lines like, "It's a pizza with no crust," into a mic, while the developers were just falling out laughing, which, by the way, if I can interject my opinion real quick, I gotta give the flowers to the developers. Kudos to them for them just relinquishing their ego and stepping out the way and saying, hey, we don't know everything about this street ball culture, bringing in people and letting them do their thing and not trying to tell them, no, we would do it. No. Let the culture speak. And I think that's one of the reasons why this game turned out the way that it did, because they let the people who are actually involved in this culture really get their hands into it. So I gotta give the devs their clout to that. But yeah, the head of the music department,
salute to them. And that's all about it right there. When you really just be off the restricted side and let people be they self and bring the game to life off their personality and their funniness and all that, that's what makes a game chef kiss. Simple as that. You know, just go in there, let them and like do their lines the way they do it right there, let them freestyle and stuff like that, and you just put it on in the game and it works to perfection. So shout out to the devs for actually giving them a lot of creative freedom and do what they need to do to make one of the best fucking games out there.
Was the popular 2000 producer Just Blaze, which is another example of what I mean when I say the developers went and got really people from the culture. He's the main reason you were bobbing your head to the beats during the gameplay. I think that's more commonly known. What's not so known is that the developers wanted 50 Cent in this game. Now, I did my research. I scoured the internet up and down, and I couldn't find a definitive answer. So I'm not sure in what capacity he would have played a role in NBA Street Volume 2. It could have been original music, production, or voiceover work. What I can confirm is that it never happened, because 50 Cent got turned away at the Canadian border due to his prior felonies, forcing him to fly back to New York. Guess his song How to Rob didn't just scare all the industry rappers. It also had Border Patrol looking at him like, the whole process behind the development of Volume 2 reads like a comedy. And somehow the result was one of the most culturally authentic sports games that ever shipped, made by people who had to learn the culture from scratch, specifically because they respected it enough to try. Then there was NFL Street 2. That came out at the end of 2004, and EA Big did it again. This time for football. Same 7-on-7 no rule structure as the original, but now with the wall moves. You could literally run along the walls on the field, bounce off of them, use them to chain into jukes or catches. The Game Breaker 2 function as an automatic possession flip or a guaranteed touchdown when fully stacked. Exhibit was on the cover. The soundtrack mixes Nas, M.O.P., and Royce da 5'9" with Papa Roach and Sum 41 in a combination that should not work, but somehow absolutely does. And the Own the City mode gave you a whole career narrative built around building a squad from the ground up and taking over Bay City. NFL Street 2 wasn't the biggest leap from the first game, but it did just enough to be considered a classic by many. Those same many would also be playing Def Jam Fight for New York in 2004, which was a unique...
And before they jump into Fight for New York, let me say for NFL Street Volume 2, it may not been on the level to some people like NFL Street was, but they took whatever NFL Street was and added more things to it. Very versatile with the gameplays, the game breakers and stuff like that, how you earn style points, and then even like Own the City with its own kind of like my career type of modes. Like they had a lot for you to do on there. And again, playing those modes unlock you different things that you can try out on the versus menu and shit like that. So you can see it was a lot of longevity into it too. And then you added Exhibit into the mix and, making him one of the celebrities in there. Like, come on, man. That shit was goated. And now we better get into another goat we see right here on the screen.
Take on arcade wrestling games. It belongs in this conversation because it's running the same exact cultural operating system as everything else in this era. It sported 67 playable characters, Snoop Dogg as the villain, 5 fighting styles you could mix and match, and a story mode where you could buy Rockaware fits, get jewelry from Jacob the Jeweler, and have the hottest chick in the game at the time fighting over you, such as Lil' Kim and Carmen Electra. The 14-year-old version of me loved this power fantasy, and it would seem many of you did as well, and that's why Fight for New York sold over 1 million copies. The early 2000s was just a great time to be a gamer because if you weren't interested in the games I just discussed, you always had other options such as NBA Ballers, MLB Slugfest, FIFA Street, SSX Tricky, and One Street Hoops if you were mentally ill.
Oh! Babe, I don't feel good. Could you call the nurse for me?
Remember this part?
Yeah, all right. Are you all right? Hold on. Nurse? Could you come in here, please, quickly? Billy is getting his ass
whooped on Street Hoops. I need a witness.
EA Big was doing something the main EA Sports line structurally could. It was making games that felt like artifacts of a specific moment. The music, fashion, personality. They were the focus instead of products optimized for a marketing brief. NBA Street, NFL Street, SSX, Def Jam, all of it lived in that lane. Pick up and play on the surface, but genuinely deep if you wanted to go there. And always fun first. So if the golden era was this good, what the hell happened for the fall off?
And before we get to the fall off, just like he said, there was so many sports games you can just pick up and play and enjoy without all the extra shit. Like the SS Trickies of the world, the NFL Streets, the NBA Streets, the Def Jams, all of those things, NBA Ballers, like all those things had different unique styles that could be attached to certain people that loves that type of games. Like you had a lot of, variations of games that you could try out and see what fits your lane. And that's something you can master and all that too. Like you don't have to be on one specific game that you have to learn everything, through all of the nonsense that they have. And, you pretty much put so much time and energy for only for niggas to sit there and like, you know, go on another level. But the point is, you had a lot of games full display with you that had their own unique of gameplay, and whatever had tickled your fancy and you enjoy, you always had that to go back to. You know, that was the love and the passion for those type of games. And of course, as we about to get into the Fallout part of it, here's when shit start hitting the fan, which was brutal.
Shout out to J. Cole. Ironically, 2004 isn't just the
Shout
year
out
of
to
some
J.
of your
Cole.
favorite arcade sports titles, but also the year the math stopped working in the genre's favor, and it starts with one single business decision. EA signed an exclusive licensing deal with the NFL, and just
The
like
worst.
that, NFL 2K is dead. NFL Fever is dead, and
Yup.
every other football game that isn't Madden loses access to real teams and real players. Dead, dead, dead. Therefore, Madden
Worst
has no
mistake.
meaningful competition for the first time in its existence. That's not a sports game story, that's an economic story. You remove competition from the market, you then remove the pressure to be better, and the only optimization left is extraction from you. And that's exactly what happened. Madden didn't suddenly get worse overnight. It
I know I'm talking a little over this right now, but that was kind of the same way too when you look at it from a standpoint of WWE at the time when they when Vince McMahon brought out WCW and ECW, all the competition right there. Guess what? You have all these people on your roster right now. It ain't going to hit the same like we expect because now expectations at an all-time high now, and motherfuckers looking for you to deliver. And of course, when certain things doesn't happen and they get so repetitive, that's when you start losing the aura and the feeling. And that was the same way when EA Sports Big, or in this case, EA decides to get the license for NFL, and then boom, look how everything turned out. We don't get no NFL fever. We don't get no other sports games with the NFL license that was fun. You know, we just get the same shit every single year. It was bad.
just stopped having a reason to get dramatically better because the audience had nowhere else to go. It also doesn't help that a lot of the sports sim community tends to be hard-headed, in my opinion at least. They refuse to try other genres of games, often opting instead for the gaming is dead rhetoric on social media, despite being loud and wrong. It creates a vicious cycle of self-inflicted harm, only amplified by having that exclusive NFL license. So, microtransactions increased with every release, innovation slowed to incremental roster updates and marginal feature additions that were nothing to phone home about. That exclusive deal reportedly cost EA hundreds of millions of dollars in guarantees over its lifetime, and they made every cent of that back by being the only game on the field. But here's what makes 2004 worse than just one bad deal. It was a template. When the HD console generation hit with the Xbox 360 and PS3, development costs exploded. A game that cost a mid-sized team to build on PS2 now needed a massive studio, HD assets, motion capture budgets, and years of production time. Suddenly, the math on an arcade sports spinoff doesn't make sense, especially one you can't monetize long-term, and we know that's what they want. You're asking a publisher to greenlight a full-scale licensed game that might move 2 million copies at best, sitting right next to a sim game like Madden that prints money annually with minimal reinvention. Nobody in a boardroom is choosing the fun arcade game. Basically, them business suits, them executives said, I know for a fact financials play a major role in the decline of arcade sports games. I've had dinner with EA employees before, and I've asked why they don't make a new Street game or why we haven't seen a new Def Jam game. The answer I got was they know that people love them, but they didn't sell well, which might seem hard to believe because these games are
And once again, they talking about it ain't gonna sell well. Do you know there is a massive community of people that wants another Street Volume 2 game, even a remaster of it. You don't have to redo it again. Just remaster it on these consoles and just import it to like the PS5s, the Xbox Series X, or even on Steam. That's it. That's all you have to do. Polish the game up, and we're fine. We got it from there. No need to add no virtual currency into it. No, we unlock it the same way we do. We put the hours into that shit. Sometimes you gotta take those leaps of faith and put your chips forward. If the fans and the community is asking for these type of games right now, and you have the control, the creative control to bring them back, you have the licenses and everything, why would it hurt to not take that opportunity, go for it, and you make all that money back on the back end? You definitely do that. You see how many people were asking for another Def Jam Fight for New York? Or even another version of it? And I get it. At that time, rappers, celebrities were getting pennies off a dollar, for that game. Like, someone wasn't getting paid at all, but it just wanted the love and experience of playing with their characters on there. So I know in this day and age it's going to be tough, but at the same time, you never know what can happen unless you take those chances. That goes for everything in life, but especially when it comes down to your classic games that really was a staple within your franchise. You have to take advantage of that and give the audience what they want. Plain and simple, it's not hard whatsoever. It's not. They just try to do that, find every excuse and beat around a bush, when it comes down to these conversations, and we back saying the same thing over and over again every single year.
Considered cult classics, but if you check out the stats, NBA Street Volume 2 only sold 1.9 million copies, and Def Jam Fight for New York only sold 1.7 million copies over their lifetime. It's one of the reasons why it's so hard to find used copies and why they're so expensive on the resale market. They're rare. To put things into perspective, that new 007 First Light game sold 1.5 million copies in its first 24 hours. My theory is that a lot of us played these street games, but we didn't own them. What I mean is that a lot of us played them at our cousin's house, or we rented it from Blockbuster, or years later we played it via an emulator, but truthfully, they didn't sell well when they were on the shelves. You have to understand, everything is driven by revenue, unfortunately. And what didn't help is when in FIFA 09 shipped Ultimate Team and the whole industry watched a new revenue model get discovered in real time. You don't gotta make a better game. You just have to make people feel like they're building something and then charge them for it and then redo it every year. EA Sports live service revenue now runs in the low billions annually, with Sports Ultimate Team modes generating roughly $5.5 billion in 2024 alone. That's not revenue from selling games, that's revenue from selling the ability to play the game you want to play. NBA 2K watched that happen, and they decided to run the exact same play. Take-Two Interactive's microtransaction revenue has run at roughly 64 to 81% of the total company's revenue in the recent years, with NBA 2K consistently named alongside GTA Online as one of the primary engines driving these numbers. The game that used to cost $70 now has a functioning game economy where virtual currency is the currency, grinding is the punishment for not paying, and the best version of your player now sits behind a wall that gets taller every year. Meanwhile, the NFL was quietly doing the blitz what the business model did to the genre as a whole. Year after year, league representatives pressured Midway to strip out the elements that made the game worth playing. The late hits were first, then the excessive celebrations, then the over-the-top animations that gave every tackle a pro wrestling energy. By the time EA's exclusive deal made the whole argument moot in 2004, Blitz had already been sanded down into something that barely was remembering what it used to be. Now, Midway did take the game unlicensed with Blitz the League in 2005. They brought back the violence and added a whole steroid subplot in the story, but without the real NFL teams, the cultural weight just wasn't there. And sadly, Midway had to file for bankruptcy in 2009, and Blitz went to the shadow round with them. But what gets lost in all the financial discussions is the generational damage underneath. An entire generation of sports gamers didn't just lose access to arcade sports games, they got actively trained out of expecting them. Now there's a whole generation of gamers who grew up with card packs, player auctions, and VC grind cycles as the default sport gaming experience, and the industry normalized that so completely that a $30 price arcade sports game like NBA The Run is now looked at as a radical idea. Not nostalgic, but radical. The baseline shifted so much that most people didn't even notice it was happening, and that's because the shift was gradual enough to feel like progress. See, the genre didn't die because nobody wanted it. It died because corporate greed became the priority over consumer sentiment, and that led to the dormant years. What sucks about business is it's always on to the next dollar with these suits. While us arcade sports fans mourned for the lack of new titles, the industry just moved on. At one point, EA tried to bring NBA Jam back in 2010, and on paper, it should have worked. I mean, Tim comes back to record new lines, the 2-on-2 structure's intact, the on-fire mechanic is there, but it doesn't blow up the way anyone hoped, and EA takes that underwhelming commercial response as confirmation of something they already half believed, and that is the lane is dead, the audience moved on, so don't bother with any more of this bullshit. But the reality is that the game was just underwhelming and half-baked. Fans deserve something special, and instead they got what looked like a mobile game on console. What EA didn't understand is that the revival needs more than just a core loop. It needs positioning, marketing that treats the game like an event, and a cultural moment to attach itself to. The 2010 NBA Jam got a quiet release and just a shrug. That's not a failing genre. That's a publisher not fully committing and then blaming the concept when it doesn't pop on its own. The years after that is just a stretch of false starts and near misses. I mean, NBA Playground shows up in 2017 and it's just fine. 2-on-2, NBA players, arcadey feel. It's fine. It's an okay game. But there was no crazy art direction that sticks out in your memory, no unique gameplay features, no commentary that makes you feel anything, and no cultural anchor that gives it weight beyond, this is the kind of game we used to play back in the day. And the worst part is, its sequel, NBA Playgrounds 2, was bogged down by microtransactions because 2K bought out the studio behind Playground and forced them to put card packs in the game just like My Team in 2K, so any hope of that series improving quickly went out the door. Nostalgia alone is not a product. You can't coast off the memory of NBA Jam and expect people to feel what they felt playing NBA Jam. That feeling has to be earned by the game itself, and Playgrounds never quite hit their stride on that. You also had other false starts, such as that god-awful Def Jam icon that stripped the series of all of its identity in exchange for some DJ mechanic. You had NBA Street Home Court with that weird art direction. I mean, the whole game looks like it has an Instagram filter on it. And don't get me started on the shallow gameplay with the weak defensive mechanics that felt repetitive. It's safe to assume arcade sports fans have been starving for a new addictive experience. But sadly, some years would pass before we would get anything new. Some smaller studios have taken their own swings. I mean, Super Mega Baseball is a genuinely good game with tight mechanics, smart design, and the kind of baseball that doesn't take itself too seriously. Mutant Football League exists and it has its fans, but neither of them have the NBA license or NFL branding or the kind of cultural gravity that made Blitz and Street feel like they were part of something bigger than the game itself. They're quality products, but they don't really move the needle. What the dormant years made clear, if you step back and look at them honestly, is that the problem was never demand. People never stopped wanting these games. The problem was that nobody with the right combination of resources, licensing access, and genuine design ambition stepped into the space with something built for right now rather than something built to remind you of 2003. The formula needed updating, not resurrection. Those are different things. And I think one studio finally figured out the difference that could lead to
the rebirth.
The studio is called Play by Play, and the game is NBA The Run. Here's what makes this different from every other attempted revival in the dormant stretch. The people building it already know what went wrong. Play by Play is an 18-man indie studio led by some former EA developers. Those people were actually in the room during the Street era who understand these games not as reference points to copy, but as design philosophies to build from. They're not making a nostalgic product. They're asking what that energy looks like when you rebuild it from scratch, where an audience that grew up online expects crossplay and knows what rollback netcode means. NBA The Run is a 3-on-3 street basketball game that's online, fast, and a roster of 30 plus NBA stars alongside their rookie variants and street legends. The best part about this being made by a smaller, passionate studio is they're listening to the community feedback and making changes as quickly as possible. You gotta understand, sometimes less is more. When you're not bogged down by corporate bureaucracy, you're able to move more swiftly like SEAL Team 6 when your community demands change. An example being, this game was slated to launch with just current NBA stars and their variants, but they've already heard your feedback from the beta and they plan to add NBA Legends post-launch.
I can commit here now that we're going to do Legends for sure. Yeah. We're doing them. It's just a matter of when.
NBA The Run will be
Look at that. When you have people that listen to the community and willing to make changes to make the game fun and not so repetitive and it's just a flash in the pan, guess what? Now you got something on your hands that people want to tune into more and play a lot more now. Like, you already got them sold on that. It gives you that NBA Street, NBA Jam type of vibes right there. Like I said NFL, NBA Street Volume 2 when I did the reaction video to the trailer and stuff. But now looking deep into it, it was more like an NBA Jam type of like vibe when you see the gameplays and stuff. But it made the game fun, and people have been checking this out. I've seen people playing this a lot and heard very good positive things about it too. And at least with some of the negatives that's happening, the developers look to it, listen to it, say, okay, they want to add Legends, they want Legends on it too. We're going to put them in there. No problem. If something else got to get tweaked, cool. We'll do that too. So they're on board with that. And for them to be synced into doing these games, these arcade games that makes it fun and not so brain dead and all, it opened the door for them to try other things out too and add their little spin to it. So if you want to take notes on how they do things, pay attention to play-by-play. They do that shit the right way. Good shit to them.
Played on real courts, examples being Venice Beach, Rucker Park, and the Tenement in the Philippines. Courts that mean something, not generated arenas, not placeholder environments, spots with actual history behind them that anyone who's followed the culture for more than 5 minutes already knows, so when they see them, they get excited. And this isn't by accident. It's the same move Volume 2's team made when they anchored their game in Rucker Park. It's important to ground the fantasy in real geography, real mythology. The whole thing just gets heavy. Now, the knockout tournament structure is where the run separates itself from everything that came before. There's no traditional arcade ladder, no endless queue. Every session is an elimination tournament, and to keep things fresh, each match in the tournament will be a different game mode that's randomly selected. This forces the players to think closely about how they shape their lineup, because if the dunk equals 3-point mode gets picked and you're just a team full of Steph Currys, you're getting screwed. There's knockout squads, knockout solos, and knockout friends. That structure borrows the tension that made Battle Royale games impossible to put down, but without actually turning into one. It's not 100 people in a circle, it's basketball with consequences. Every possession matters more when one loss ends your session. I think that stakes per minute ratio is exactly what made the old arcade experience so electric when you were feeding quarters into a machine with a line behind you. The best part is, even if you do lose, it's not a big deal in NBA The Run because matches only last a few minutes, so you won't be tilted for 3 quarters straight like when you're running with randoms in 2K's Wreck. In regards to the online, rollback netcode is here, and it deserves more attention than it usually gets in conversations about this game. For a twitchy physical 3-on-3 arcade game where a crossover has to chain into an alley-oop, input lag isn't just annoying, it kills the entire feel, so I'm glad they're focused on trying to provide a smooth experience. See, The Run is built around eliminating the gap. The devs describe wanting transitions to feel instant, spin into a lob, get the alley-oop. Feel it happen when you press the button, not a half second later when the server catches up. That's the baseline the genre needs to work online, and it's a thing that most previous attempts quietly failed to deliver. In a landscape where sports games have spent 15 years building elaborate psychological architectures to extract reoccurring revenue from a captive audience, shipping a flat price arcade basketball game is not a business decision, it is a position. It's someone saying out loud that fun is worth $30 and doesn't need to be monetized past the sale. Yeah, that's right. All future updates will be free, and thank the heavens. But for the sake of being fair, I did want to provide feedback from my time playing multiple betas with this game. Just know this video won't drop until the day the game does, which is June 9th, 2026. So if any of my complaints were already fixed, I apologize and just ignore what I said. That being said, I believe NBA The Run has a solid foundation, but here's what I would adjust.
Add more options. The current camera's options are okay, but it makes it hard to see the action. I prefer a 2K camera. Add more tricks. The last beta added more, and we appreciate that, but the crossovers, the Sham God, and the slip and slide are still not enough. When people hear made by former NBA Street devs, they expect more sauce in the game. Nerf the blocking. In no universe should anyone who is behind me and completely out of position warp to my body and block the shot. Fix the steals. Steals return to the ball handler far too often. Let's stop rewarding dumb asses. There's a bug that doesn't allow players to shoot immediately after catching a pass. It happens randomly, and it's frustrating when you're wide open. Add in-game voice chat. Not everyone has access to Discord, and running with randoms online without communication is a nightmare. Single-player tournament mode is cool, but that's still an online experience. People want a more traditional single-player experience. You guys added original street legends such as Destiny, DJ Jackson, and 4 others, but where are their stories? Why don't you give us the option to create our own character, grind them, and then take them online in tournaments? Why do people only dribble with their right hand? No duplicate players should be allowed on the same team. 3 Wembanyamas on one team is f***ing ridiculous. Add WNBA players.
And all his factual shit that he's saying right there. Simple as that.
Don't tell me it's not possible. There's already a woman in the game, Destiny DJ Jackson. She's one of the street legends. Go ahead and put Angel Reese and Kayla Clark in the game too.
There are other arcade sports games out there, but none of those have the NBA license, the street basketball culture, and the modern online infrastructure all pointing in the same direction at the same time. NBA The Run has all 3. Now, what it does with that determines whether this is a revival or just another failed attempt. Now, if it connects, it doesn't just bring back one game, it potentially reopens a conversation about NFL arcade games, arcade boxing games, the whole lane that's been locked up since Midway and EA Big's lights went out. So understand I'm not saying or promising NBA The Run as the next big arcade sports title, but my OG once said that rising tides raise all ships. So please understand I am rooting for Play-by-Play Studios to stick this landing with NBA The Run when it drops June 9th, 2026 for PC, PS5, and Xbox Series. And if you have any level of interest in checking out this game, please do me a favor and tap that link in the description box below to use my link to purchase NBA The Run. If you're too broke to do that, just click one of the cards on the screen and check out my previous videos.
Yeah, shout out to the Black Hokage, man. He definitely nailed it with this video. Fantastic breakdown of the generation of, you know, some of these old games, you know, from where it started to, you know, the rise of it to the fall of it, and he broke them down tremendously. My closeout, you know, of all of this, I'll say this right now. With the NBA The Run being out as of now, the old developers that was part of the NBA Street franchise knew exactly how to revitalize this type of content these games in regards to, like, you know, NBA Street and what we love and all. So for them to use NBA The Run as a Kickstarter, their the development team and stuff, and put out a game that's very archaic and you don't have to do so much, you know, I feel like that's where they took what made games fun. No virtual currency, none of those things right there, and make everything free. That is how you do things. And the sheer fact of a lot of things that some of the people have been saying that they needed to add into the games and want them to make adjustment for, they listen to them, they take every bit and piece of information that they have, and they go back to the drawing board, keep the game how it is so people can still play, but add adjustments and say, okay, let's add some more plays into it, let's tweak how the gameplay, the dribbling and stuff, add some styles to it too with the cross moves and all, and even add WNBA players too. So I feel like in due time they're going to get all of those in the game, but the sheer fact that they're listening is a step in the right direction, and that is what going to catapult them to new heights, because now you got somebody that could trust, that know that, okay, whatever it is going on with games that you're putting out there, you're going to put your time and energy to make happen. So I feel like there could be a potential comeback with that type of studio right there, and I'm looking forward to see what they do for the foreseeable future. So all I ask is that for any development team that decide to bring back those type of sports games that made it fun and all that, or you try to revitalize, you know, what they had around the early and mid 2000s, all I say is bring those type of games back that's fun, minus the virtual currency, all of that stuff, and just revamp it with this day and age things and mix it with the old ones. You do that, you're going to see sales goes up. You're going to see people put their hard money into it and take some time and enjoy the game and even grind. That's all it is. I love to grind games that I feel like is worthy of my time and I have fun with. When that happens, you got me sold. You got me sold. So that's all we're looking for. And I know some people have different mentalities on games too. They don't want to go through that whole scenario and rather go through the virtual currency areas. You know, people that game in this type of generation are going to see that. But for us, you know, old school players that have been playing it since the 90s to 2000s and all that stuff, we're looking for that grind and energy, you know, that we could put to a game, like put almost like 100, 200 hours into, you know, playing and shit. Like, that's fun for us. If we do that type of hours and we put that into a game, you got success on your hands. So that's all we can hope for and all that shit. I didn't expect this video to go this long, but hey, I was able to say my piece on it too. Shout out to the Black Hokage again. I'm gonna pin his original link in the description below. Y'all make sure to go check it out, give him a like, give him a subscribe and all that too, man. He definitely has spoke some good things on this video. But comment down below, let me know, how do you feel about it? What was your favorite classic game, sports game of all time? and all that stuff. And what do you think they should bring back as well? I definitely want to hear your opinions, you know, in the comment section below. For me, you know, I'm kind of getting that NBA Street vibe with NBA The Run. So that is already a check off my list right now. I will want to see another Def Jam game, you know, and hopefully with Def Jam Studios that not Def Jam, Death Row Studios that, or Death Row Games, excuse me, I'm all over the place, that Snoop Dogg is doing. Maybe we might get some indication of a Def Jam. Who knows? But I just hope they take the time and really listen to us and what we asking for. But we'll see what happens. But I appreciate your love and support. Road to 300 subscribers. Continue to keep God first. Just the process of anything that you do at life. Your time will come. And I'm going to catch y'all on the next video. Peace.